We don't talk about that. Why would you want to talk about something so painful? Let's talk about something more pleasant. Every family has them. Those stories that are never spoken of. Those unpleasant memories that when lifted to the surface are immediately put back into their box to remain in the darkness until another curious family member dares to broach the subject. It is hard to invite pain into our lives intentionally. After all, isn't there enough pain in the world around us from the present? Why stir up the pain of the past? It's in the past, leave it there, they say. Such good questions, and I get the inclination to pack away the pain. As a human and as a rabbi, I am witness to so much pain, so much of your pain. Over the past year especially, each of us have had to navigate loss after loss after loss after loss. Of course, this is true in normal times too. Those we love die, relationships end, dreams are dashed, jobs are lost. We suffer from disease, but all the more so this year when you add in the isolation, the fear from a very present danger, and the lack of security on every front. All of this pain we carry every year, but especially now. And that pain may be the very thing that brings us together in community on Friday evenings as we begin Shabbat together. Perhaps we're looking for an escape from the noise of the world, the noise of our lives. We begin by bringing in more light through our Shabbat candles and acknowledging joy as we bless the wine. And maybe there's something to that. After all, isn't Judaism's focus on joy what fuels our resilience as a people? And that brings us to our calendar. Here we are in the Hebrew month of Adar, the month in which the rabbis of the Talmud declare, Misha nichnas Adar marbin b'simcha. When Adar enters, they say, increase in joy. And we can see the connection between this Hebrew month and joy, as with the quickly approaching holiday of Purim, a day of revelry and silliness, of costume and comedy, of seeking out the hidden nature of things and giving ourselves permission to let loose. One of the central ideas of Purim, however, comes from chapter 9 of the book of Esther. V'hanafochu, turn it upside down. V'hanafochu, it's the opposite. Seen as a call to reject social norms for a day, to embrace ridiculousness, to let go of what holds us back. But these words actually come from a very particular part of the story of Esther and the story of Purim. The v'hanafochu, often translated as the opposite happened, refers to the day on which the Jews were supposed to have been massacred in Shushan, but instead, v'hanafochu, the opposite happened. So what is the opposite? I'll tell you, it's not pretty. In fact, it is almost never mentioned in our studies of the book of Esther or our retelling of the story through our spiels, but the opposite is the opposite. And instead of the Jews being massacred, the Jews participated in a massacre of their enemies. How is it that a holiday that focuses on joy and light has such a horrific ending? And why do we avoid talking about it? A simple answer may be that it makes us uncomfortable, which is fair. It is uncomfortable. In a story about saving a minority people, the victims become the victimizers. In a story in which we boo at each mention of the villain's name, we become the villain. This is v'hanafochu. Perhaps instead of it telling us to turn things completely upside down, of doing the exact opposite, it is instead a cautionary tale, a reminder it's a fine line between defending the oppressed and becoming the oppressor. But what do we do with v'hanafochu right now? Adar represents something else this year. We have now reached the Hebrew month we were in when quarantine began a year ago. Last year at this time, v'hanafochu was all we could experience, and not as an invitation to boundless joy and letting go, but instead an all-encompassing, devastating, complete reordering and restructuring of our daily lives. But it also serves as our warning now. Do not go to the complete opposite. Now is not the time to stop masking or distancing. The world is upside down. Let us not become the enemy by allowing our fear to excuse horrific decisions and choices we may want to make. As many have noted throughout this year, Purim last year was the last time we were able to gather in our building as a community. This anniversary, like so many markers of time, puts us in a reflective state. We look back at the year that was, but this year we are all too aware of the year that was not. As we approach this 1 year anniversary of our pandemic life, this year of living upside down, Purim may not feel like such a relief. We may wish we could heed the command of Purim to turn it all upside down and put things back right side up again. Lately, I've seen more and more friends posting to social media about how difficult this time has been for them and how it's finally time for them to be able to share that with people. They share that whenever it feels like we're taking a step forward, we're pushed 2 steps back. When vaccines are finally being distributed, we hear of new strains of the virus, or we find the distribution system difficult to navigate, or even worse, impossible to access and completely inequitable. Or even on a personal level, they'll write, "I'm okay, but I'm not okay." Or as Rabbi Jennifer Gubitz has coined, "I'm pandemic fine." Their posts continue, "I've really been struggling. No, I do not need advice. Yes, I do have that for which to be grateful." A year in, and we're still remembering, we need to have our pain witnessed by others. We want to acknowledge that we hold gratitude and fear together in the same body at the same time. Jewish joy is not about ignoring the painful parts of life. It's about embracing the pain, being able to hold it, but to not let it keep us from simultaneously experiencing, acknowledging, recognizing joyful occasions and expressing gratitude for that which we see around us. This Shabbat, as many of you may know, is also known as Shabbat Zachor, the Shabbat of remembrance. And what is it that we are remembering? There's an additional reading from the book of Deuteronomy that mentions when the Amalekites attacked Israelites from behind during the Exodus. With attacking the Israelites from behind, that means they were targeting the most vulnerable of our people, the elderly, the children, the injured. Haman is said to be a descendant of these people, a descendant of Amalek. Hence why we also attempt to blot out his name as well. However, in our process of blotting out Haman's name, it only makes us more aware of his name as we wait for it with each line of the Megillah when it's read. We become aware of what it stands for, of the behaviors and warning signs to which it makes us sensitive. Never forget is a statement we as Jews repeat and live by, committing ourselves to a world in which hatred has no home. This is why we remember. Even the difficult things, even the pain. Shabbat Zachor, the Shabbat of remembrance. This is why we acknowledge pain and the ugliness in the world, to ensure we do not become it. And so, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the hard things, the painful things, the difficult things. But let's also remember the joy. Let's not forget what Purim reminds us as well. Before this verse with V'hanafochu in the book of Esther, earlier in chapter 8, we encounter one of the best known lines from the entire Megillah, the line we recite each week at Havdalah as we end Shabbat. La Yehudim hayta ora v'simcha v'sason v'ikar. The Jews enjoyed light and gladness, happiness and honor. There is light and there is gladness, and there is happiness in being honorable. As we remember what we've lost in the last year, we also remember the ways in which we found light. As the song continues, Kain tie lanu, as this was true for our people in the past, so may it be for us. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the darkness as a reminder to ourselves to continue to hold the light. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will.